Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the school board meeting on Monday, March 8th. It is 7 p.m. and I'm calling this meeting to order. Ms. Marston, will you do the roll, please?
Yes, Mrs. Barker.
Here.
Mrs. Fairgrieve.
Here.
Mrs. McCabe.
Good evening,
Here.
everyone. Welcome to the school board meeting on Monday, March 8th. It is 7 p.m. and I'm calling this meeting to order.
Mr. McNally.
Here.
Miss Weibel.
Here.
Mr. Mannheim.
Here. Also, I do not like hearing my own voice. Will you all please rise for the pledge? All right. So our first order of action tonight is, do I have a motion to approve and appoint Mr. Lackner to fill the school board vacancy?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. McNally and then Mrs. Fairgrieve. Ms. Marston, will you take the roll?
Mrs. Fairgrieve.
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe.
Yes.
Mr. McNally.
Yes.
Miss Weibel.
Yes.
Mrs. Barker.
Yes.
And Mr. Mannheim.
Yes, motion passes. So at this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Lackner up and wait for him to come up here for a minute. All right, Mr. Lackner, before you, I guess we can sit or stand at the view.
Okay.
But in front of you, you have, I guess raise that, the oath, the school board oath. So what I'll do is I'll read part of it, and then if you just want to say it after me, then
Very well.
then we'll welcome you aboard, right?
Fantastic.
So I, Nicholas Mannheim, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the member of the school board of Community Unit School District 303 in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability.
I, Joseph Lackner, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the school board of Community Unit District 303 in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability.
I further swear that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district assets. I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board, while respecting the privacy of students and employees. I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public meeting.
I further swear that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets. I shall encourage and respect free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board while respecting the privacy of students and employees. I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels. As part of the school board, I shall accept responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district. I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Community Unit School District 303.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels. As part of the school board, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district. I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Community Unit School District 303.
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. I shall strive to ensure continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law. I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students in our community school or schools to advance the vision for Community Unit School District 303. And I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the board has created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law. I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community's school or schools to advance the vision for Community Unit School District 303, and I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the board has created, fostering excellence for every student in the area of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, so that takes us to our next item, which will be the citizens' comments. And before I have Mrs. Barker read our preamble, we do have 2 full sheets tonight. So in order to try and listen to everybody tonight, please try to be respectful of the 3 minutes. Or if you've heard your constituents have said some of the similar things, maybe you can bide your time, but because we would like to hear everybody if we can. So just try to, again, just be respectful of the time. Keep your mask on, all that good stuff I've said the last year. So with that said, Mrs. Barker.
The school code provides for a public comment period at each board meeting, subject to reasonable constraints. The practice of this board is to limit public comment to 3 minutes per speaker to a total of 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. Speakers addressing the board are expected to maintain a reasonable level of civility. Also, personnel matters are sensitive and confidential. Comments regarding individuals should be respectful. Insults and defamatory remarks have no place in this setting. The board will terminate public comment if speakers cannot adhere to these guidelines. Please identify yourself at the beginning of your remarks.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Barker. And I will do the best to read everyone's name, but if you can, when you come up and speak, if you can just say your name as well. So our first speaker is Kate Bell. If you just want to sit on the edge of the table, then we could pass it around. Thank you.
I might have extra, I don't know. I'll wait till you all get it. Okay. Hi, I'm Kate Bell. Most of you already know me. Sorry about that. I have one student that already graduated in the district, a 2020 grad, and one other still in the district. All right, here we go. Most of you know me from speaking out against bullying and advocating for student safety on board meetings. Today's topic is student safety yet again, which begs the question, when will this change come and how many more times do I have to do this for action and change to take place with regards to bullying? That answer remains to be seen because here I am again. My son was a victim in 2017 of a deviant and violent incident during an athletic practice. Since then, I seem to have been nominated by the public as so many students, parents, and staff trust me to come to me because we had such a public incident that it seems to be I'm the one everyone comes to. Due to my promise to my son and the entire community, I will continue to advocate and come here and speak on student safety, especially in athletics in D303. Tonight, I'm going to be reading verbatim from a FOIA given to me. In order to protect the identity of those mentioned, specifically in this document, I will not be sharing a name and will instead purposely use more vague terms. Thus the reason why you have a copy, so this is for your information. The The reason I gave you copies is so you can clearly review the documents in hopes of action will be pursued with regards to future employment decisions. The following sentence is from this FOIA. The person obtained this FOIA would rather not have their name read publicly, so I will refrain from doing so and saying anything further on that subject. The date of the document in front of you is November 2019. The following sentence is specifically quoted from the documents I will be giving the board. And I quote, "It seems that concerns I advised you about last year regarding a staff member, inappropriate behavior with female players and off-color comments with male players has still been an issue and is resurfacing once again." End quote. The reason I'm bringing you this information forward is not to confirm or deny or any of the specifics on that sentence I read you, nor the allegations. I have no idea. However, what's alarming is that the inappropriate behavior noted is not only beyond acceptable, if it's true, it resurfaced near the November 2019 timeframe, as this letter suggests. That is inexcusable. Why am I here tonight? Because I want to be ensured that situations such as these are thoroughly investigated, found to be credible in any way, and are swiftly dealt with when it comes to making employment decisions. Behavior like this must be immediately reported to authorities, investigated not only by the authorities, but investigated within D303. And these are not mere suggestions. May I remind you, this is a federal mandate. Anyone employed by D303 is, in fact, an obligated reporter. When things like this happen, there's often fear of retaliation, not only on the parent, but also as the students involved in either the nefarious, disgusting behavior or in reporting said behavior. When retaliation of any kind takes place, all that does is ensure that no one with valuable information will come forward. That's why I'm here, because the people involved in this aren't being taken seriously, as well as they don't want to be retaliated on. So here I am speaking on their behalf. Not only is this disgusting, it's highly illegal. Not reporting it, investigating it is also illegal. And then the third is when people are retaliated upon for seeking protection, also federally illegal. My hope in bringing this information to you is that this sort of behavior is not tolerated in D303 anymore, now or in the future. And that any of those reporting anything will not only feel comfortable doing so without fear, but do so without retaliation. Take action now. Take action today before another student is put at risk and then retaliated upon after reporting it. And in the end, nothing's just ever done. And this disgusting, inappropriate behavior continues. If you don't protect the D303 students, nobody's gonna.
Okay, next speaker is Joe Bloomquist.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Joe Blomquist, SCEA president. I just wanted to come before you after several months of extensive conversation, and I really appreciate the dialogue last month where you asked where the staff stood and how the staff are feeling. I'm going to go like this so I don't move my back. After those discussions, we did engage with our membership, with our teachers, with our staff, and after some long, meaningful, deep conversation, overwhelmingly, our SCEA members, over 1,000 members, are in support of our district equity goal. We are ready to engage in this difficult but worthwhile work. We are excited about the opportunity. I also want to say that in terms of the partner that we choose to engage in this work, we have not taken a position. We have not been part of the exploration of the program, but again, we want to engage in this work in whatever way that you as the board decide, in whatever path you decide to take on this work. We also want to express that there's a lot of conversation out there that this is going to work its way into our curriculum. And we are confident that you as a board and our administration know that the curriculum work requires input from citizens and staff as part of the curriculum development process. So we are confident that this work that you're discussing about moving forward, if it is going to make its way into the curriculum, that we engage in those conversations beyond this point. And we are happy to bring members of our teachers along in that process, if that is part of the process. I do want to say, I'm going to quote Steve Jobs. Actually, I want to quote him correctly. Do not try to do everything, do one thing well. And we as a staff are so passionate about this work that if we're going to do it, we want us as a district to do it well. And so this should be the one major thing that we do at a given time. We don't want to juggle it with multiple other initiatives. So as you consider that, please consider making this the work that we do. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Elena Gedula.
Hello, my name is Elena Gedula, and I'm a senior at St. Charles East High School. I support District 303's partnership with Deep Equity because I believe that all students should have equity in their access to education and to promote increased success among minorities and populations that see inequality and disadvantages in parts of their education and academic careers, such as in areas like standardized testing, where white students meet standard scores 25 to 30% more often than students from minority groups. As the current president of our school's Gender and Sexuality Alliance, or GSA, our goal has always been to foster a more diverse and inclusive environment to help students feel like they are receiving equity in their education and treatment by other students and staff. I always hear experiences from our members of discrimination they face from other students, or the fact that they do not feel represented in the course material taught to them in classes such as social studies and English, all of which can affect their mental health and thus overall performance at school. I am happy to recognize that Illinois is one of the first states to require schools to teach LGBT+ history, yet I rarely see or hear from others about this topic being taught to students and still commonly experience homophobia and transphobia in the school. I also feel like students also need to be educated more on the histories of other minorities, such as Black history, for example, as members of our GSA and other peers I know from across different clubs still report seeing racism from students, such as offensive jokes. And as a student myself, I frequently hear rude comments or slurs used by other students passing in the hallway, and even if they're not directed at any students in particular, it still contributes to an unsafe and non-inclusive environment, which is one of the many reasons why the lack of equity in courses on different types of histories and education still needs to be addressed. Overall, progress towards equity in D303 schools, such as by partnering with Deep Equity, will help ensure that more students will succeed in their academics, regardless of their race, sexuality, gender, and more, and will help open up the minds of students to many diverse backgrounds that will prevent the spread of hate and academic inequality in our schools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Eva Johnson.
Hello, my name is Eva Johnson, and today, Hello, my name is Eva Johnson. I'm a sophomore at St. Charles East High School, and today I will be reading a letter to you that a graduate from St. Charles East sent to the Board of Education. To whom it may concern, I understand how it may be tempting to claim that D303 is already fair and equitable towards students. As an institution meant to foster learning and personal development for children and teenagers, it hurts to imagine that students are not receiving the support they need to succeed in their present and future lives. As such, a vocal minority of parents unaware of any injustice in the district may claim that the proposed equity work in the district is unnecessary. However, this could not be further from the truth. The board has already been presented with the statistical need for equity work, so I write to you in hope of illuminating our community to a former student's experience after spending 13 years of my life as a student enrolled in D303. I cannot stress enough how strongly I support the proposed partnership with Deep Equity. While I cannot personally speak to the nature of racial or class inequity within the district, as a recent LGBTQ graduate from St. Charles East High School, I can say with certainty the atmosphere fostered in D303, both in and out of the classroom, was directly responsible for forcing me into the closet for 5 years of my life. Coming to terms with being gay and non-binary was a challenge in its own right, but the vulnerability of young adulthood coupled with the perceived lack of support at school made the prospect of living openly as myself too terrifying to consider. It wasn't until I neared graduation in the midst of a stay-at-home order last spring that I began to come out to close friends and family and begin my gender transition without fear of negative reactions from my teachers or peers. The curriculum itself further fosters an othering of LGBTQ students due to a lack of education on their own existence. All of the information I ever learned regarding LGBTQ identity and history came from my own research outside of school. No history class touched on early queer activism of the later half of the 20th century or context of the AIDS epidemic. Language arts or government classes rarely mentioned this group outside of the context of debating the extent to which legislation should protect us. And health class neglected to talk about our identities in a way that would foster proper emotional health. The nature of this education within the D303 curriculum as of recently leaves LGBTQ students behind when it comes to learning about who they are and their relationships, which can have real harmful effects on their lives during and beyond secondary education. I do not exclusively blame the district for their past shortcomings. However, D303 stands at a crossroads right now in which they have the choice to actively make their schools a better place for students and staff, or to force thousands of future students to experience the same injustice and inequity that has hurt those before them. I firmly believe that the proposed partnership with Deep Equity is a key step to accomplish this and provide the best environment for all students. Sincerely, Jaslyn Bells, STCE, Class of 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is it Holly Barbosa?
Hello, my name is Holly Barbosa. I have two girls that are in college. You both graduated from St. Charles East. And so I'm speaking from the perspective of a parent and a taxpayer. And when this issue came up, I was honestly appalled that we would even be talking about inequity in our schools, because as a public education, the function of public education is to educate all the children. So it was very frustrating. And in your oath that you just read, you said, I take the oath to do all children, and then you said every child and every student. You said it 3 or 4 times in the oath that you just read. I think that although we agree that there's inequality, although we agree inequity in D303 has been a problem for a long time, the problem has not been fixed. The district has either not been able to solve the problem from the inside, or perhaps has not addressed it. I don't know how we've had the problem go this long and not even address it. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this short for you. If we now have the opportunity to have professional help, to have somebody come in and help find the specific problems, specific things we can do, and solve this problem, I think that we really need to, it would really be treachery to the students and to not take that opportunity. Outside help is, I know one of the arguments was that they didn't want the outside help. They didn't mind the money, I guess, but there's lots of money, but the outside help was the deal. And I just think that in all of our lives, we use CPAs and we use tutors for our kids, and we use personal trainers, and we use our whole life, we use outside people. And I don't know why the district would think that they could tackle a problem that they have not tackled in all these years, and they would have the opportunity to do it now, and they would not do it. We pay taxes to support our community and infrastructure, our first responders, our libraries, parks, and our public education. And I pay willingly so that all people can enjoy those safe places, all those resources. And I pay my taxes willingly for every child not just mine, not just my neighbors, but for every child in the district. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Mark Huber.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Huber, and I'm here to talk about communication. So it's campaign season, and the Daily Herald put together an interview of all the candidates. And I've been coming to these meetings, and I've been engaging, and I put my opinions out there. And through that interview process, I learned more about the people at this table than I have over the entire year that I've been here. And that begs the question, where is the communication? There's a lack of communication. We don't know you as well as we should. We don't know where you stand, and we're here tonight talking about equity, and we don't know the methodology in which you guys made that decision, if you made that decision. That's the kind of communication that we're really looking for. Like, what type of due diligence was done? What type of partners were considered other than deep equity? So I think that I heard some of the candidates talk about a closed loop. A lot of people here come up, they speak, and then they feel like their voices fall on deaf ears. There's no response, there's no emails, we've had kids come up, nobody's responded to them. Their parents are home, the kids are upset. I hope we could break that wall down and have more communication moving forward. And since we're all talking about equity and deep equity, I want to make an important distinction. Just because you might not like the partner does not mean you're not for equity. There seems to be a blurring of the lines right now between being for deep equity and being for or against equity. And that's driving this community apart. Just because somebody doesn't like the partner does not mean that they're not for equity. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sonya Murray.
Hello, my name is Sonya Murray, and I have 3 kids in the district, 1 in elementary school, 1 in middle school, and 1 in high school. I was born and raised in St. Charles, and I attended Davis Elementary, Haynes Junior High, and St. Charles High School. Another little fun fact is my grandfather, Joe K. Anderson, served on the school board in the 60s. He played an integral part in building Davis, Richmond, and Anderson elementary schools. Unlike my grandfather, that could speak to anyone at any time, small groups, large groups, it's not easy to come here and speak to you at the board meetings. So tonight, I'm here to represent the D303 community of parents. I have spoken to over hundreds of parents with kids in D303 over the past year. And trust me, I say hundreds, really, in my kids' sports, at the gym, in different relations, everyone we talk to, that's what we're talking about, our kids and going to school. So I'm not exaggerating on that. Regardless of their views, from political to this and that that's been happening over the past year, we all have one thing in common. And that one thing in common is that we believe that our kids should have the opportunity to attend in-person learning 5 days a week at the elementary, middle, and high school level. We felt that way in August. We felt that way in December, and we still feel that way now. The time to act is well overdue. I have nieces, I have nephews, we have family friends and states all over the US. Guess what? Since August, they have been attending school 5 days a week, full days, maybe one adapted 2-week pause in Arizona. But other than that, these kids are in school. I keep thinking that things are going to change here, and it hasn't. I also keep thinking I should not have to move to these states so that my kids can go to in-person learning. I have friends right now, they're all thinking, I'm moving to Texas, I'm going to move to Florida so my kids can go to in-person learning. These kids deserve in-person learning for their social, emotional, and intellectual development. We as a community can do better. You as a board can do better. Let's give these kids an education that Joe K. Anderson would be proud of. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Dana Franzetti.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dana Franzetti, and I have 2 students in the district, both at St. Charles East High School. And I have written down 5 questions that I want to present to the board. I know you won't answer me in this exact form, but I also emailed them to you this morning, so hopefully you're prepared and maybe can talk about them during the meeting tonight. And if not, then perhaps post something in the next couple of days, because I think they're questions that the community has. And I agree with Mr. Huber that you have a communication problem. It's not the quantity, but rather the quality. People feel, and I think that's a lot of the frustrations, you feel like you can't get straight answers, either from just looking at your board website and trying to get information as to what's going on, or if we pose a question, we get kind of a canned, non-specific response that's clearly been run through legal. And really what the community needs is just some clarity. So I'm going to kind of go through my questions, and they're actually not that complicated. The first one is, what is the plan for high school graduation? Parents need to take days off from work. We have grandparents that want to come into town and need to make travel plans. They've been vaccinated. They want to come celebrate. We're 10 weeks out, and we don't, I understand there might be a plan A, a plan B. We don't know anything. So we need to get that out as soon as possible. That's a pretty simple question that I've asked repeatedly for about a month and have not gotten an answer from. Second question, when will this board take the power back with regards to making decisions about reopening our schools? That was given away. And since the board represents the community, I kind of feel like you gave our power away, and I think the time has come to take that back. Third question, what is the plan that you have in place as to when and how students will return to in-person learning? Understanding that there's difficulties and considerations, totally fine, but we need some clarity as to the when and the how. Just providing the information is really helpful to the community, because otherwise you have rumors, you have information floating around that may not be correct. You know, everything hinges on the 6-foot rule, which, by the way, is not law. It's just a guideline. It's not a bright line rule. It's something to be considered in the totality of the entire context, but then everything hinges on that. Or everything hinges on, oh, the insurance won't let us do it, or has something to do with liability reasons. Again, I mean, I'll talk to your I'll talk to your school board attorney about, educators' liability insurance if you want to, but there's really no other districts are getting sued because you can't about contracting COVID, but I won't go into the specifics. But the point is kind of need to address some of these issues. My fourth question is, are there specific issues or impediments being raised by the teachers union with regards to returning to in-person learning? And I think we're entitled to know that as a community, just to understand if there's issues that we need to address. Not that they're right or wrong, but we need clarity. And my very last question, because I see time is up, and I mean this quite sincerely, is going forward, would this district ever consider hiring non-union teachers? That is not meant to be an adversarial question. I actually mean it quite sincerely, because this being in a crisis, we've learned that we need to act with agility, and perhaps it would be an interesting thing to think about. What if we had a mix in our district? Would that have helped us in this situation should we ever face something like this again? So thank you.
Hey, our next speaker is Shannon Sullivan.
Hi, my name is Shannon Sullivan, and I'm here today to put on public record that I am under personal attack by a sitting board member. I'm asking administration and the rest of the sitting board members to evaluate these published accusations and proceed accordingly. I have evidence supporting inaccurate statements made by Ms. Weibel. Ms. Weibel's board record can speak for itself. It demonstrates how she walked away from every principle she ran on after being elected. It is unsettling that we have an individual brazen enough to use their seat at the table to further her election aspirations. Yes, I have been advocating to open the school since last year. Yes, I do not support curriculum that is divisive in nature and has no proven data of success. Yes, I have volunteered my time and helped 4 individuals get elected to this board. All of this is true. Parents should not be bullied because we advocate for opening the schools. We advocate for board members to vote no on placing political propaganda in the classroom. Our children are hurting enough. I'm asking you to partner with parent groups instead of constantly blaming them for everything wrong in this district. Dr. Pearson himself took a step too far last week by calling the police on parents collecting petition signatures. Enough is enough. Parents are within their legal right to be on public school grounds. At the end of the day, we should all be focused on the same objective, and that is a full-time, quality education for all of our students.
Okay. Our next speaker is Jim Slater.
Good evening. My name is Jim Slater. I'm the parent of 2 children in District 303, one in high school and one at Redling Middle School. I'm here tonight to voice my opinion on the Deep Equity Program being considered for our district. I'm very concerned about the agenda that Deep Equity has. While I would definitely denounce any form of racism or inequality, I don't believe that our district should adopt this plan. The program is based on the assumption of white privilege and systemic racism, which I don't believe exists in our community. I've heard that part of the purpose is to help underprivileged children, which is an excellent objective, but this program is not the way to do it. The exorbitant costs of Deep Equity could be significantly reallocated towards underprivileged children in our school districts and not to a for-profit organization like Deep Equity. The program actually promotes divisiveness and an us versus them mentality. Teachers are encouraged to call out their colleagues if they disagree. Deep Equity actually has strategies for resistance built into their manual. I know we are limited in time tonight, so I respectfully ask you not to approve Deep Equity. One of the other gentlemen made a good point that there are other organizations that you might look into, but I feel that Deep Equity is not the right choice. Please consider the following questions. What is the district doing to educate the parents about the Deep Equity program? What are the costs of the program? What are the goals of the program? And what are the assumptions being made that would make you think this is a plan we need for our district? Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lori Muing.
And feel free to keep the extra copies if it's appropriate to pass it along. There are references and resources that I'll refer to in my remarks. My name is Lori Muing. I'm the guardian of a 7th grader at Redling. I do not believe the Deep Equity program will close the inequity gap in this country, and more specifically in this school district. Why? Their underlying premise is false, white privilege and systemic racism, and their message is divisive. Inequities in this country has existed since our founding and are due to many complex factors such as education, family structure, financial means, and civic order.
Deep Equity's teaching may make us feel better about ourselves by selling the notion that this program will make a difference, but how does it really help anyone? Taking a few courses, hanging some signs, doing some mea culpas to white privilege, and we're good to go, and now we're all social justice warriors. It took decades to arrive at this point, and it takes hard work and time to make real progress. Nothing will change until we find solutions to real problems and stop defining ourselves by race. Provide top-notch education for our students, for everyone, and ensure our local communities can provide a safe environment for all our students, irrespective of our sexuality, of our race, or any socioeconomic background. They need to grow, learn, and flourish. I also question the appropriateness of deep equity and any social justice training belonging in our education system. This type of learning, in my opinion, is better served by our families, communities, or our religious institutions, not schools. If you still feel this subject is appropriate for our schools, then have the academic honesty and courage to balance the offerings to include works of alternative Black race theorists such as Dr. Thomas Sowell, Dr. Shelby Steele, and Dr. Walter Williams, to name a few. The resources are in front of you. What you propose with deep equity is introducing an ideology through the back door, rather than having an open and dynamic instructional exercise on race theory. I also feel it disingenuous to portray this offering as for teachers only. Teachers do influence our children. Isn't the YES program designed to target high school students? You talked about it in the learning group. How demeaning and divisive and unempowering is it to teach minority children that their success is dependent on changing the attitudes of minorities? They are meaningful. That minority children need to be treated differently in order to succeed. They shouldn't. They're like everybody. That those who are successful earned it at the expense of others. They haven't. We are lucky to live in a country with personal freedom and a free market. Let's spend our resources teaching individual self-worth and instilling a confidence in our children that they can overcome any adversity and, yes, even racism. Teaching our future adults the power of self-determination, the dignity of worth, and the satisfaction of personal contribution and achievement. Volunteer and take action in your community. Become a CASA GAL. I can talk to you about that. Spend our time and our limited educational resources improving student performance in math, science, reading, writing, literature, and get our kids back in school. We can adopt deep equity program that continues a narrative of blame, shame, and self-incrimination, or we could live Dr. King's dream of an America where people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. How do we become a colorblind society if we teach our children that racial background or ethnic origin is the primary characteristic that defines and ultimately divides us? I ask you to think long and hard and vote against deep equity and think about a different way that'll really make a difference for our kids, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Jen Haslet.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Haslet, and I'm a parent of 2 middle school children. They go to Redling and D303. I just want to thank you firstly for allowing me to come and speak. I'd also like to say I'm very thankful for the school board's response to the COVID-19 pandemic over the last 12 months. Measures were taken based on ever-changing information and employed in good faith to help ensure the safety of students and teachers and staff, and I'm thankful for that. However, the past year has also become clear to me and my husband that the changes employed have become, unfortunately, there's been some unintended consequences and potential mental health issues for children. Simply put, we believe our kids and many children in our community are struggling to learn outside the classroom. Their need for social engagement and routine has never been greater. Every week I watch my grade 6 son, who is currently on a hybrid schedule, struggle to get out of bed and start his day alone in front of his computer to learn asynchronously. I watch his anxiety heighten, his Chromebook a constant reminder. There is always an assignment waiting to be completed, or something missed, or something pending. It is never ending for him. There is no substitute for the rich learning experience that comes from in-person, 5-day-a-week learning with a teacher in the classroom with our children. Fortunately, a year in, we now know more about the risks and the transmission, and things are looking promising. Studies are showing that rates of illness and transmission in children are lower in school compared to rates of illness and transmission outside of school. Teachers and childcare workers will have access to the vaccine within the next month, or certainly by the time children return to school next year. And the most vulnerable members of our communities are also receiving vaccines. This is all very good news. I also understand that other school boards in other places have demonstrated they are able to open safely without significant risk to teachers, students, or staff. I believe this gives us hope and models to look to so that we can build in-person 5-day-a-week learning for our children in this district. In closing, I would like to very respectfully request that the board consider reopening our school next year full-time in the fall. The mental toll, stress, and potential lack of academic progress is just too steep a price to ask our children to pay if we continue along this current path. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Susan Meeks.
Hello, I'm Susan Meeks, and I have a son at Redling, and I'd like to talk today about in-person learning. First of all, I appreciate the board for attempting to make decisions that meet many different needs. I want to express gratitude for the teachers and the staff who've shown up every day to educate our children. I know there are many teachers who've been working harder than ever before, balancing a workload of online and in-person learning. Parents, too, have been pulled in many different directions, helping their children while trying to work full-time. Yet, with all this effort, our students are not thriving. The nonpartisan organization Fair Health released a report on March 2nd entitled The Impact of COVID-19 on Pediatric Mental Health. In order to complete this evaluation, they analyzed from over 32 billion private healthcare claims. It was a powerful testament to the negative impact the decisions of the past year have had on our children. One statement reads, "Young people have proven especially vulnerable to mental health issues related to the COVID-19 pandemic. School closures, having to learn remotely, and isolating from friends due to social distancing have been sources of stress and loneliness. A review identified high rates of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic symptoms among children during the pandemic." The data goes on and on. Self-harm, depression, drug and alcohol abuse, and emergency room visits have all increased over 90% since the school's limited in-person learning. Perhaps we can excuse ourselves for taking drastic measures at the beginning of the pandemic. We had little information. We didn't know if children were affected by the virus or if they were carriers. But what is our reasoning now? We have answers to these questions. Our teachers have been offered the vaccine along with other essential workers. And they are essential workers. In order for our community to function properly and our children to thrive again, they need to be in school. I would also like to briefly add that I do not think that this is the time to adopt new programs such as deep equity. Most parents are unaware of the details, and our attention has been on the pandemic. Please allow us more time to learn this new method before a decision is made. I'm asking the board and the district to make the necessary changes to get our students back to full-time immediately. We cannot continue to harm them from the decisions we made when we lacked knowledge and experience. The board culture statement reads that it will make decisions in the best interest of all students. It commits to opportunities for exemplary student growth, academic achievement, and positive social emotional development. We need to hold ourselves and our district accountable to this main objective, making the best interest of our students our primary goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Dana Cave. Is Dana here? Oh.
Hello, my name is Dana Cave, and I am a sixth grader at Redling Middle School. I do not like this hybrid schedule because of many reasons. The first reason being that I lost almost all contact with half the kids that I used to know because we're split in half, A and B kids. This means that I do not see half the kids that I used to be friends with because of this. I have also had limited social interaction because half the students are missing. I've had a hard time communicating with my teachers. Part of this is because I can't directly ask questions in class half the time. And in a couple of my classes, we do work at home, and then all of our learning in class is going over the work that we did at home. You can imagine how hard this is for me because all the learning we're doing in class is work that we did on our own without teacher help. And it's even worse for the high schoolers because they only go 2 and occasionally 3 days a week, whereas I go every other day. Their schedule constantly changes. Can you imagine having every day different for you, having to do full remote, hybrid, or in person? Let's not even talk about the emotional toll on students. Without social interaction with many other kids, it is hard to keep your self-esteem high, especially when you have to wake up early every day with almost no motivation, but still have to do online classes, listen and pay attention, and be expected to understand everything. There is a full remote option for those who need and want it. And all we're asking is for a 5-day week in-person school for the spring. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jennifer Moore. Jennifer Moore.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Moore. I have a son who's a freshman at North and a daughter who's an 8th grader at Redling. And I'm wondering why my children aren't at this point in school more. We have had many of the common struggles that all of us as parents have experienced and have heard, that you have heard from other experience. My son loves school and he'll attend any time that you give him. My daughter has anxiety. She made great strides in 7th grade with the help of school staff. That is all gone now. Every day that she goes to school is an emotional struggle for her. Last week, she said, "I hate hybrid. It is not a consistent daily routine, which she needs." Neither of my children are getting the education or experience that they deserve. I have read and heard that the social distancing rule is one of the main factors in not having students return to 5 days per week. The ISBE, IDPH, and CDC all say when referring to schools and social distancing, and this is a quote, "Social distance must be observed as much as possible." The ISBE guidelines continue. Desks do not need to be spaced 6 feet apart. However, it is recommended that excess furniture be removed to allow for as much space as possible. And that IDPH, in-person instruction, is strongly encouraged in phase 4, and the guidelines will require the appropriate use of PPE, prohibit more than 50 individuals from gathering one space, require social distancing to be observed as much as possible, require the schools conduct symptom screening, require an increase in school-wide cleaning and disinfection. all the other things we are doing. And the CDC recommends for modified layouts, spaced seating desks at least 6 feet apart when feasible. Modified learning station and activities placed at least 6 feet apart if possible. Create distance between children on school buses when possible. I suggest to you that it may not be possible or feasible to stay 6 feet apart when prioritizing the educational and emotional well-being of our children. Also, the WHO has consistently recommended keeping a physical distance of 1 meter, which is a little over 3 feet. That's doubling our capacity. Most of the teachers and staff that want to be vaccinated will be by the end of this week. Allowing for the 2-week full immunity, students should be back in school 5 days per week after spring break. Many surrounding districts are moving in this direction. District 214 is returning to full instruction April 5th, and they serve over 11,700 high school students in 6 high schools. If they can figure this out, certainly we can.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Heather Copper.
Hello, my name is Heather Copper. I'm here to advocate for my daughter, who's an 8th grader at Redling. Here's a little from a paper she wrote about school and how hard it is to be 6 feet away for 8 hours a day. Due to COVID, the kids are missing out on making friends, sharing ideas, creativity, and problem solving. My day starts as I walk on a bus and quietly take my seat. I miss being able to talk to my friends on the bus. I have to keep my mask on, even though I'm 6 feet away from everyone outside. I then show my phone and it says I'm COVID-free. I have to grab a wipe and sit on a table outside the desk and wipe off my table and chair. I have to sit at my own table far away from everybody else. I don't talk to anyone because we're so far apart, and with masks on, it's hard to hear. Usually we just get instructions by our teachers and sit there quietly, working on our Chromebooks. It's very hard to learn this way without group work. I learn best when working with others in hands-on learning, and I believe most kids do. For PE, we're outside running, or we just play badminton. That takes a long time. We have to be socially distanced and clean all of our badminton gear. For lunch, we have the option to sit outside, but it's way too cold. Most people don't bring coats because we have to carry them around all day with all of our other belongings. We don't get to use lockers this year. So I sit inside and we only get 2 people at a table. We used to have about 6. I don't really like lunch. It's hard to make friends and you can't get close to people. Nobody really talks. The schedule of going every other day is pretty difficult. One day you have to get up early and get ready and go to school, and the next you just stay in your pajamas and work on your Chromebook. We need to open school back up 5 days a week and lose the 6 feet distance like airplanes, restaurants, and stores do. And if you don't like it, then you could choose remote learning. Thank you, and I hope we can open up like many other districts.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mike Henderson.
So, it's interesting. I've been here a couple of times with you guys and had the opportunity to speak to you guys, and I really appreciate that. I do agree that some of the comments that were made earlier about the wall and about, not having some resources coming back and forth to us that we can actually share and have value in. So I think that's one of the things that are missing right now. I agree with people who said that. The other thing is, when you think about it, I work for a major corporation. I have the opportunity now, because I've been working for a major corporation, for the last year, I've been spending the same amount of time with my daughter at home as much as I am, which is okay, because that's okay. I get paid, I work, it's fine. For my daughter, it's not. And it's interesting because the challenges that come into play for somebody who's 17 years old, who has all the drive in the world, 5 AP classes, working her heart off to get things done. And she still struggles. And now, even more so, she's having more challenges that we're having to deal with. And again, it's not your issues, it's our issues. But unfortunately, it's what's happening to all the kids. All the kids around you, if you look anywhere, and I can tell you, I talk to my friends, I talk to people outside our area, and we all seem to have the same challenge. It's like a COVID virus that's impacting everybody, that all of a sudden took that energy away from the kids and put them in their houses where they kind of sit there and say, okay, well, what do I do now? And I think somebody said something about, pajamas and getting, using a Chromebook and get up and going. And that's kind of what my daughter does. But she also happens to go to, St. Charles North. So she does go to hybrid classes. Now, I'll tell you, it was interesting because of all things this week, which I never thought I'd do, by the way, but I wanted to share this with you guys because it's really interesting. And maybe you guys can add some input to this. And my wife inadvertently sent this to me, so that's kind of the interesting part about it. But hang on, right? Come on. Start that. Okay, so we have a student, right, in AP classes that was told they are 2 months behind. AP classes are 2 months behind. How do you take students who are AP students who now know they're 2 months behind? And this is what the students found out this week, right? So my daughter, in her infinite wisdom, and she's usually pretty creative about things, my daughter says, you know what? Dad said it's true. It is true, Dad. You're 2 months behind in AP. And you know what? I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make my AP test because I won't have the skill set to do it. Again, you all know the AP test is tough. And to make the AP test, it's even tougher because you got to build up the understanding of what's needed and required. They have to be able to deliver what needs to be done from a book point of view. And right now, there's my daughter saying, look, you know what? They're 2 months behind. And the content that we need to have for our AP exam, we're not going to have. So do they pass, they go take the AP exam and then not show up? Or do they not do the AP exam because they're not ready for it? You're 10 weeks away and you've got 2 months behind. Sorry about this. They go on, she says, this really makes me mad. This is my daughter's name, by the way. I know, I'll finish up in a second. She might not get the extra credit for college because she's doing the same thing like other people are doing the AP courses. She wants to get that credit for the courses, right? But she's not getting that right now if she can't finish it, if she can't take the test, if she can't take the test, she can't get the credit. It's a really kind of a trickle-down problem you guys got here. And it's not just my daughter, it's every other AP student in North and East that are going through these challenges. And somebody has to address it and do something to help make this work. So I appreciate your time. I really do. I appreciate what you guys do. So thank you and hope you have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Shannon Ferens.
Hello, my name is Shannon Ferens. I have 3 students in 303, 2 elementary, 1 junior high, and we are new to the district, thankfully, because we are from the U46 district, and I'm sure you've all heard what's going on over there. So today, what I am about to say may sound shocking, and you may want to dismiss it as false information, but what I am about to say is a scientific fact. Cloth face coverings do not keep out any viruses and could even increase the chances of getting a virus. There is no evidence that surgical or cloth masks work to prevent the spread of a virus, according to a study done by the CDC for the WHO a few months ago. Then I asked the real hard question, why are we putting on masks at all? The psychological damage alone for our young students. Young children use facial expressions to learn and have an emotional understanding of situations. This could lead to parts of their brain being stunted as a result of wearing a mask. Other major issues children wearing a mask include increased irritability, headaches, difficulty concentrating, less happy, reluctant to go to school, impaired learning, and drowsiness and fatigue. The damage we are inflicting on the children are far greater than the ones we are even aware of. I'm also concerned about the level of education our children are receiving when they are treated like lovers, making them quarantine their Valentines, not able to turn in their papers, not being able to sing in music class are all sad examples of their new reality. They need to be embraced at a time like this, not treated like they are part of the problem. The masks are taking away their voice, their power, and their personality. There is substantial proof that masks are not doing what we are told they do. And you combine that with a child recovery rate of 99.997%, then I ask, why are we doing this? We need to listen. We need to not listen to any propaganda or strict government ruling anymore. 13 states have lifted the mask mandate. We need to come together as parents and as a community and do what's best to protect our children. We need to treat our young future the way they should be treated, with the best education we can give them in the most comfortable environment. I have cited websites to support my claims. I leave you with the question that we would like an answer to. When are the masks coming off? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Xing Wu.
Good evening. I'm a parent of two D303 students. One is in Redlands Middle School, one is in St. Charles East. I have a question about the Campus Academy. So before the beginning of this new school semester, there was a Zoom meeting online for parents talking about Campus Academy. To me, it came as quite a surprise. The reason is, first of all, as a parent at D303 for almost 10 years now, I never knew we have a choice to choose from in terms of educational model. I'm talking about traditional / classroom / subject-based versus something called competency-based education. I have no idea we had, in the first place, we have choice to choose from in the first place. But more importantly, I asked questions in the Zoom meeting which did not get answered, which is, my question was not that difficult, is it D303's intention to move toward competency-based education? And if it is, what is the timeline of the transition from the current system to the new system? But if it's not, why do we have that? And why it's now? It's not clear to me. And secondly is, same question can be asked for Chicago, for state of Illinois, and even for the country. Is the nation moving toward competency-based education from the current system? So as a parent, I don't know much about, I don't have much information about this competency-based education before that Zoom meeting. So to me, it's a surprise. And my son in St. Charles East, he doesn't want to take it because he told me his friends, nobody takes this new system. But my question is this. So what I do know is that this is going to change dramatically from the grassroots, what our education system would look like, and what the school looks like, and it's going to change the way students learn in the future. So to me, this is not trivial. This is a significant topic we need to address. So tonight, I'm not here against Campus Academy. I'm here to ask questions because we need to know, where does this topic come from? I don't know, I don't have a background. I knew there are spots in the nation who are doing this. And also, where are we going from here? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anjali Viswan.
Hello, my name is Angela Viswan. I'm a junior at North High School, and I'm here to talk about the issue of diversity at D303. I wanted to share a personal experience that I've had at D303. This is an experience that my brother had. My brother has always been a perfect student, and his passion for learning brought him straight A's. So when he wrote an essay about Diwali, which is a beloved Indian holiday, and his English teacher gave him a failing grade, my dad was confused. This teacher, when my dad called this teacher, she threatened to kick him out of the excelled classes. English teacher's xenophobia was so obvious that my dad made a meeting with her and gave her an earload about how his son shouldn't be graded on his race, but on his smarts. She then gave up the A that he deserved, but that wasn't the end. I watched my brother's passion for school turn into insecurity of his skin. No student should have to go to school worrying about if they will be attacked for the skin color that they live and breathe in every single day. And I'll share a personal experience that I've had in 4th grade. My 4th grade teacher asked, "Where are you from?" So I said America because that's where I'm born. She went on to say how my parents are from India, so I belong to India. And she kept insisting this idea and asking me, "Where are you from?" until I said India. She displayed to the entire class that I'm born in India and I'm not America, even though this was a lie and I told her. I don't know why she did that. This teacher even told my parents I'm not from America, and quoting words she forced on me that I'm from India. You don't expect a 4th grader to understand why this happens, but I went home and cried in the mirror because I was born brown, not white. And I hope this personal experience, why I'm sharing it, is to hope that everyone here at the board will push a serious agenda on bringing and educating more diversity, especially for elementary schoolers, because they seem to be most vulnerable to these ideas. Because we can't expect elementary schoolers to fight for themselves against adults about their race. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Veronica Galbraith.
As a District 303 parent, I'm asking you to vote no to deep equity. Diversion and inclusion are important. Everyone should be treated equally and given equal opportunities. But the research I've done on deep equity proves the program is too radical. Deep equity has already been discontinued in other school districts in the nation when the program was revealed to parents. Deep equity and the district haven't been transparent enough in the curriculum or the agenda. We owe it to all students to consider all of our students' interests. We need change, but we can't correct one wrong with another wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes citizens' comments for the evening. Thank you to everyone that came to speak tonight. So that takes us to the superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. Mannheim. This evening, I'd like to begin with a couple of introductions. We have some new staff members that are being approved this evening for assistant superintendent roles for next school year. As you know, Dr. Chapman is leaving at the end of the year, and so is Dr. Herman. And I'm happy to introduce to you this evening the new assistant superintendent for business services and the new assistant superintendent for educational services. I'm going to begin with Mr. Justin Attaway. Mr. Attaway is our new assistant superintendent for business services. I'm just going to ask him to come to the microphone and give a brief introduction.
Good evening. I just want to start by saying thank you to the Board of Education for this opportunity, and thank you to Dr. Pearson and senior leadership team for a very positive and welcoming interview process. I'm very excited to be here tonight, and I am definitely looking forward to joining the District 303 team in July. Just as a brief overview of my experience, I spent 3 years in the private sector as a financial analyst, and I have roughly 10 years of school business experience. I started my career with the State Board of Education as an auditor, and I've spent the last 8 years in administrative roles with Glenview District 34 and most recently Skokie District 69. District 303 is known for high achievement, both academically and financially. And I've seen on the agenda, there are several opportunities, very good opportunities that the district is exploring. And I'm just looking forward to becoming a part of those come July. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very appreciative of the chance to serve the students and the families of District 303, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
And our new Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services is Dr. Christine Igo. Dr. Igo, you're welcome to come to the microphone.
Good evening. Thank you so much for welcoming me this evening. I am very excited to join the team. There's so many wonderful things happening here, and I'm happy to be a part of the team and be able to really work with everybody to kind of make those things happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, as you know, there's been continuous conversation across the district and the state about reopening of schools, and it continues to be an issue that we are working on as a district. I know that it can be very confusing as you look at what's happening in other places and other districts and try to continue to translate some of that to what's happening in our district. Just as a kind of a context, I want to begin by saying that as superintendents, especially in Kane County, we continue to work to advocate for changes in the guidelines that we're being asked to follow by the Illinois Department of Public Health, the Illinois State Board of Education, and the Kane County Health Department. We meet weekly with them to try to achieve some adjustments in those guidelines based on what's happening both across the state and nationally. And as recently as today, we've been told that there are some updated guidelines for schools that are supposed to come out sometime later this week. So I'm cautiously optimistic that those updated guidelines are going to provide us with some opportunities to make some changes at several other grade levels other than the one I'm going to talk about this evening. To begin, I would like to talk about graduation because I know that that's a topic that has been of interest. On Friday afternoon, we did receive confirmation that we are going to be able to hold our graduation ceremony at NIU under our current contract. However, currently we cannot hold it indoors, so we've been offered the opportunity to use the football stadium at NIU for that ceremony. It will be on May the 24th. On the same day that we had originally scheduled. North High School's graduation is at 4 p.m. on that day. East High School's graduation is at 7:30 p.m. on that day. Just as a point of reference, we are able to seat the students on the field under the current guidelines. And they're telling us right now under the current guidelines, and I think you probably heard even today, there were some adjustments made to outdoor events that under the current guidelines, we can have 2 guests per family, but they believe it's going to be at least 4 by the time we get to graduation. As you know, today, there were some announcements made about sports arenas and other kinds of events where it looks like there's going to be a 20% expectation for those facilities. The NIU stadium holds 24,000 people. So it would allow us, if we were under a 20% rule at that time, to have 4,800 or so guests in the facility. So we'll continue to work with them on what the guidelines are as far as the capacity is for the event. But we are going to be able to have a ceremony where we'll have all of our students together. We will be able to have family members attend. And as we get closer to that date, we'll be able to provide some updated information about the capacity. I also want to talk a little bit about high school. I think one of the things that we have wanted is to be able to provide some additional opportunities for our high school students. Under our current guidelines, we are constrained with our social distancing requirements, our capacity in our classrooms, and our space on our buses. All of those things contribute to challenges in having students in the building. However, I've been working with the high school principals, and we would like to move forward with inviting our hybrid high school students, our hybrid high school seniors to come back to school every day after spring break. So later this week, there will be a survey sent to the hybrid students to ask them if they would like to attend every day, and we will proceed with those plans. Currently at the other grade levels, we're not able to accommodate everyday attendance, but we thought that it would be important for our seniors to have that opportunity given this being their last year. And so we're moving forward with that. I'm hopeful that by next week's committee meeting that I'll have additional information to share with you based on updated state guidelines for other levels. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Pearson.
Oh, hang on. I have a couple questions. Oh, sorry. Can I ask really quick? So I just want to clarify in regards to graduation, we know that our neighbor to the south, Geneva, is announced they are having their facilities in Kane County Cougar Stadium. Can you just clarify kind of the benefits of us having it at Northern versus Kane County?
Yeah, so there's a couple of issues. One is we already have a contract with NIU, and so the fact that they're offering us an alternate facility, we're not certain that we could break that contract. But second, it does have a much larger capacity than the Cougar Stadium has. The Cougar Stadium right now is saying that their limit at maximum capacity under their guidelines would be 2 people per family. I think it's advantageous to try to provide as many family members the opportunity to participate in graduation as possible. The fact that they're going to most probably be able to accommodate as many as 4, and quite frankly, I think it may be more than that as we get closer to that date, and just the space in that facility is important. I also think it's important that we work with a partner that's familiar with graduation for us. They've done that for us for a number of years, and it's something that they're very comfortable providing and have experience doing that. I think it's the best choice going forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I have a question before Ms. Barker, sorry, jumps in. Just to clarify, and I appreciate you announcing that we're inviting our seniors after spring break. I think that's really important in regards to the social emotional needs. Are both of our high schools, we talked about this at the last meeting, still looking at inviting specialized groups of students who might need academic or social emotional or behavioral support or whatever the support need is?
Yeah, so for several weeks now, our high schools have been involved in inviting students that needed to be in person more frequently to school, either because of needing additional support for their academic program, or perhaps they weren't completing their work in an online format and they needed more structure. So they've been identifying and working with students to get them to come. At the same time, there are also students who indicate that they wanted to be hybrid students, but they're choosing not to attend in person. And so the schools have been involved in confirming whether or not those students are interested in being in an in-person student, because they are taking a seat that could be available to someone else up in those classrooms if in fact they are going to continue to attend school remotely. So they've been working through those rosters and confirming with families that hybrid students are going to be coming and that they should be coming on their in-person day. And if not, they've been asking them to switch to fully remote.
Okay, so thank you for the update about the seniors. That's very exciting to hear. I remain concerned about our 6th through 11th grade students. Depending on the guideline changes or if there's any change to the gubernatorial order, then do we have any contingency plan to begin moving those students into school? Is there anything that you can present to us regarding coming up in any of our LNT meeting, for example, that can show us, what that would look like? And then also, is there anything else we can do? We actually heard from several middle school students, and not that
any of our students are more important than other students, but they are on an asynchronous all by themselves day. And it is especially challenging for 7th through 8th grade students, speaking about 11-year-olds to 13-year-olds, and sometimes 14-year-olds, depending on your birthday, that are just on their own. And sometimes parents aren't home on those days. And I know it's building up for a lot of middle schoolers. I know that it is for high schoolers as well, but there is no synchronous day to move them through it all to kind of get through a day. Is there something that we can look at to, what are the barriers to getting more students in? Is there any other creative way to get our middle school students in more often? And then also, and then one more thing. I had asked about contingency planning for the fall. And I would like to know where we are on this. When will we expect to see a draft plan? Several districts have already been putting out information for next year.
So I think the biggest challenge there, and you alluded to it, is that we continue to wait for some updated guidance from the state. We certainly have been operating as a district and planning for full in-person for the fall, with the understanding that we may still be required to offer some kind of remote opportunity for students who choose remote. And we certainly can bring some more information about that at an upcoming learning and teaching meeting. I think the problem is we are operating right now in a very similar structure to what we were doing last spring, where we wait for some updated guidance and then all of a sudden a big document comes out with a bunch of information and we're expected to be responsive in a short amount of time based on that updated guidance. And it is extremely frustrating for those of us that have to do some of this planning because completely different plans need to be put together based on some of that information. And to the point that we've been working with some of our state representatives and state senators to share some of those frustrations. And I know that our parents in our community feel very frustrated about, just the lack of motion. And I would just like to say again that in Illinois, different than maybe what's happening with friends or family members that live in other states, those decisions are being made at the state level. The Illinois Department of Public Health, the Illinois State Board of Education, and the governor's office are all three the groups that have to sign off on any changes to guidelines for schools. And so we continue to have to wait for that updated information. We were told today that the final version of whatever these new guidelines are waiting for approval. And I assume that means at the governor's office level or at the IDPH office level. So yes, we can talk about it. And I think what I'm hoping is that we'll have some new information this week that could inform that conversation. And perhaps at learning and teaching, maybe next Monday night, we could have that as an agenda item to talk a little bit about what that looks like going forward.
Thank you.
I will let you know that we will always make time for that discussion at L&T. No matter what else is on there, we want to get as many kids back in the building as quickly as we can. So we will have, if we have to bump other items, that will be on the agenda.
Since we're talking, Dr. Pearson, when will families hear about seniors coming back?
Yeah, so we've put a survey together that we hope will go out. I don't know that it will be ready tomorrow, but by the middle of the week, possibly Wednesday, that survey will go out. We need that information for planning purposes. We are going to have to make some adjustments to some classes in the building. And again, this is just for current students who are hybrid or in person. Students who have selected remote will continue remotely.
Everyone good? All right. Thank you, Dr. Pearson. That takes us to our committee reports.
Mr. Mannheim, I apologize.
Yes.
I have something circled on my note here that I'm not sure that I said. For NIU, because it is an outdoor event, we do have a rain date, which is the following day, May the 25th. So if for some reason there's significant inclement weather on the 24th, we were able to secure the following day, the 25th, as a rain date. Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's great to hear. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I meant to ask the question before too. What day of the week is that?
It's Monday night. It's our original contracted day.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. McNally, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right,
Okay.
L&T.
Okay, the L&T meeting was on February 16th. We met at 5 p.m. First item up for discussion was the equity goal and the deep equity presentation. We discussed the recommendation from deep equity to facilitate implementation of equity and the potential to hire a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Discrepancies in student achievement and suspension rate were found across all subgroups, and 3 possible partners groups were researched: National Equity Project, Education Advisory Board, and Deep Equity / Corwin. Members of the board had asked a number of questions. Some of those questions were relationships and instructions. How does this impact instruction? Was union leadership involved in the process? How do we know we are moving forward? In other words, do we have an objective measure? Rubric in comparison of the 3 groups that were considered. I'm sorry, not 3 subgroups, 3 groups considered. List of local groups that have signed with deep equity, length of time in partnership, current status, and identified results. The discussion was also, the question was asked, should we hire a director of DE&I first and perform an equity audit prior to entering into partnership with an external resource? What are the specific concepts and information staff will be trained on? What are the expected outcomes? We would like to see the actual workbooks. What are the requirements that will be on teachers in terms of implementation, and how might that become part of evaluations? Members would like to consider the action items separately, hiring the DE&I separate from the partnership with Deep Equity. And there was also a question regarding the comparison of our subgroups with similar subgroups at surrounding schools in similar districts, as well as districts that primarily serve those subgroups. Moving on here. And that, of course, is on for action tonight. And the next item up was early entrance to kindergarten and first grade protocols and accelerated math criteria. Dr. Ruth presented information regarding early entrance. Early entrance to kindergarten and first grade are forms of whole grade acceleration. Current procedures create barriers, making it difficult for some families to pursue this option. New procedures designed to remove barriers and have District 303 staff perform screenings for early entrance. The approximate cost of materials and staff time is $300 per student. New criteria for accelerated math placement is based on iReady, replacing previous performance series assessment. Members of the board discussed the following: the number of students requesting early entrance to kindergarten and first grade historically, the timeline for application and evaluation, and will there continue to be an appeal process for accelerated math placement if a student just misses the mark? Next up was high school achievement growth data. And members of the board discussed the following: the 54% gaps to be addressed in the 3rd and 4th quarters were gaps identified from 4th quarter of last year. Those were gaps that remained from COVID-19 in the spring. How does data compare with like districts and their subgroups? Are the action steps at the end of the presentation aggressive enough? Are identified groups of students coming in 5 days a week? And this referred back to the need for equity work as gaps that are growing at all levels with subgroups, not just in high school. Next item up was curriculum assessment and instruction, development process, competency-based learning pathway, learning supported by flexible curriculum, 6-year curriculum cycle with CAI meeting monthly in 1 to 3 years and less often in 4 to 6. Members of the board asked about the following: the ELA curriculum cycles and needs, and the math curriculum cycles and needs. And renewals, Christine Warren presented yearly renewals for approval, along with individual costs. Those included the Zaner Bloser Open Up, Illustrative Mathematics grades 6 through 8, Eureka Math, Nearpod, Newzilla, Desmos, and Zern Resources. Total renewal cost is $582,891. Members of the board asked the following: when do we look at or for overlapping systems to determine if all systems need to be renewed? Committee recommended moving forward the resources to consent for tonight's, so it will be on tonight's consent agenda. And future items, the next meeting will be on March 15th. Potential agenda items include early release, phonics resources for K through 12, high school math, progress reports related to D's and F, and seniors looking towards graduation, as well as the item we mentioned just minutes ago. The meeting adjourned at 9:02 p.m. And again, we will meet next Monday on the 15th at 5:30, I believe it is. Is it 5 or 5:30? 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. Okay, thank you. So, all right, 5 o'clock for policy, and then we will meet after that. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McNally. Ms. Fairgrave, Business Services, please.
Business Services Committee, we last met on Monday, February 22nd. We did standing agenda items related to the Mid-Valley and the D303 financial reporting ending for the month of January. Everything is on track from that standpoint. We also reviewed a resolution authorizing transfer of monies from the working cash fund to operations, maintenance, and a couple of other funds as well. The resolution was presented, and that is actually on the agenda tonight for action. We reviewed our update in terms of expenditures related to COVID-19 at this point, which is also in the board packet for review. Dr. Chapman walked us through year-end projections for fiscal year 2020 to 2021. And then we moved into more facility items related to purchase of buses, and that is also on the agenda for tonight. We have some technology purchases, and this will be an upgrade in essence where we will get to one-to-one devices for students in pre-K to grade 3. They have devices today, obviously, due to our current environment, but these are really just upgrades. We have a voicemail refresh purchase as well, and then an additional access points purchase. Again, these are all technology or infrastructure type items. Dr. Chapman took us through the 5-year forecasting model, and that will really be the basis for building the 21-22 budget. We received a food management service update related to our food service program. We talked about that at length. The contract renewals are going to be on the March or April Business Services Committee for review. We reviewed a rebid of the Bell Graham Elementary School playground improvements. That was originally slated for last summer, but we put that on hold again due to the COVID environment. So we're re-looking at that to be taking place again after school's out this year. We have some contracts related to asphalt paving, another capital improvement related to firearm replacement for Munhall, Wasco, and Wildrose. We also have some additional security enhancements for Thompson and Redling that were reviewed. And then we have some carpet replacement that's taking place at Haynes and Thompson. We have some furniture purchase that we talked about for Compass Academy. And then finally, we discussed some pending purchases related to building and maintenance type items related to a truck, utility vehicle. And then also we have an RFQ that we reviewed for architectural services, and that will be going out, and the committee authorized administration to move forward with that, and that should do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkey. We didn't have policy, but we heard that it will be before business services this month. So CAC.
So we haven't actually had a committee meeting. We have been having focus groups. And so the last focus group was March 4th. And those focus groups were split. They started out as a whole. We did have some people who were online, and we were in person for the first time in a long time. So that was pretty exciting. When we split up, we each talked about what were some big ideas that we had, and then what were pros and cons of those ideas. Each group really got deep into the conversation, and then came back and presented back to the group. There were some common themes among the groups, but they're not at solutions just yet. They're really just getting some big ideas down based upon the need statements. And so we did have a meeting before that. I don't know, Ms. Nick, if you want to talk about that one, that last focus group that I don't think we had an opportunity to talk about before.
I feel like I talked about it, but
Did you?
it was a virtual meeting that we had, and they were in their finishing up the statements, the need statements, and making after they had presented to us, they were trying to create the language so it was more student-centered, and that was what they were doing, which fed into where Mrs. Barker attended. Mrs. Barker and I are taking turns at the facilities meetings. So she goes one meeting, I go the next meeting. So I'll be at the next one. We want to alert the board that there is a possibility that they will need a little bit more time. They are scheduled to present in April, but we'll know fairly soon whether or not
I think possibly after the next meeting that you'll be at, that we'll know whether or not we need to scoot that timeline back at all. Some groups were moving pretty fast, but others needed more time.
I attended DPTO. It was there's not a lot to report. They did a lot of sharing about their fundraising across the district. I can tell you that the presidents of all the PTOs are very grateful to the local restaurants and businesses that have supported their schools during the COVID time, and they have been able to raise money as people go and pick up their dinners at a variety of restaurants. So the group continues to work hard to include all children, including those who are remote, and it's just a great group of people working for the best interest of our children.
Thank you. Was there a housing committee?
Housing committee did not meet this month.
Okay. All right. Well, then that concludes our committee reports for the evening. That takes us to our 4 action items. And our first item, do I have a motion to approve the high school graduation fee?
So moved.
Mrs. Weibel?
Second.
Ms. McNally? And Mr. Moore is here to give us because this was not in a committee, so. Mr.
Yeah,
Moore's
so
here to
I can actually talk about it. As an administrative team, we actually were looking at the high school graduation fee, which is typically $30. And looking at our budget, we feel like we can cover the cost of graduation for this year, and feel like that given everything else that's happened, that we would like to waive the graduation fee for this year for seniors. It's about a $33,000 cost, but we've got it within the budget. So, or loss of revenue from those fees.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Jump in with, I sent Dr. Pearson a thank you. Just appreciate the administration's recommendation on this as a, I don't want to say token because it's important, but as a gesture, I guess, to the parents for the interesting year we've had. So.
Okay, Ms. Marchand?
Mr. Manheim?
Yes,
Can
I'm
I ask
sorry.
you a question? May I make a recommendation? It is 8:45 and we have some things before G and H that I think that we've got a group of students that are here waiting to hear about. May I recommend that we take a 5-minute break and move those up to, and then continue with B through F?
Sure, we can do that. Can we finish taking action on item
Yes.
A? And then we can take a quick 5-minute recess. Thank you. So we're mid-motion, so. Okay, Ms. Marchand.
Mr. Lackner? Mrs. McCabe?
Yes.
Mr. McNally?
Yes.
Miss Weibel?
Yes.
Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave?
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim?
Yes, motion passes. Okay, it is 8:45. We'll take a quick 5-minute recess, and then we will start with item G when we return. Thank you. get on the microphone. It's 8:53. Welcome back. Per Mrs. Barker's suggestion, we are going to move up items G and H. So we will start with item G. So do I have a motion to approve the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion position?
So moved. Second.
McCabe and Mrs. Barker. Discussion. No discussion? Okay.
I can discuss. I think this position will be centering to the work that we've committed to as individuals and as a Board of Education, both in the oath of office, and we just heard that, so I'll spare you reading it. And also in the board district goals. I won't read that either, but because that's out there for people to read, and we should know what that is. But I will remind everyone that we did put action around that to hire an equity and social justice administrator and select an outside organization to assist the district in completing an equity audit. Our data tells us there's opportunity gaps, and I'm taking action to engage the district in efforts to promote access, equity, and inclusion by voting yes to this director position. I really encourage everyone to adhere to our previous commitments and be a key advocate for our students in our schools.
Agreed.
Anyone else?
From my standpoint, I also am supportive of the role. I think that it's much more challenging to really affect any change in a large organization such as ours if we don't have someone that is 100% focused to that effort. In addition to that, just even listening to the feedback from citizens' comments tonight, there were several things that I was able to jot down that we could and probably should incorporate into our strategy. Things such as curriculum reviews, making sure that our teachers of ESL students, for example, have what they need in terms of resources. Do we need additional psychologists, counselors, social workers to address some of these items? And lastly, do we have a reporting process for diversity type concerns that our students are experiencing? So my point in expanding on that is a director can help implement all those things. And that's all at this point.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Marchand.
Mrs. McCabe?
Yes.
Mr. McNally?
No.
Ms. Weibel?
Yes.
Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave?
Yes.
Mr. Lackner?
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim?
Yes, motion passes. Okay. That takes us to item H. Do I have a motion to approve the contract with Deep Equity?
So moved.
Mrs. McCabe,
Second.
Mrs. Barker. Discussion?
I have some issues with the program. First of all, I had asked a number of questions at the last meeting, and I did not really get responses. One question I had asked for was whether or not there was involvement by the union leadership, because the union leadership are the ones who have kind of their finger on the pulse of what the teachers are going to, their concerns are going to be. It was sort of suggested that there had been collaboration, but in a conversation with the union president the next day, I was told that there was absolutely no collaboration on this particular program. I requested a comparison of subgroups to the same subgroups in surrounding and similar districts, as well as districts that serve primarily those subgroups. I didn't receive that. I was told there was no workbook, and minutes later, a workbook was mentioned by the people we were told there was no workbook, and minutes later, a workbook was mentioned by the people from Deep Equity. That indicates to me that either someone knew there was a workbook and said there wasn't, or they didn't know if there was a workbook, yet we're pushing a program we weren't even sure what the materials were. So we're not even sure what all materials are going to be used, but we're pushing for a program that's going to have a pretty big, as they mentioned, systemic change. And I don't think that we have enough information right now. And I'm just going to point out that we've had a couple of, in the past, we've had a couple of situations where we've kind of rushed forward into something that we thought was a good idea. Richmond Davis was one of them. We had some educational gaps there. We addressed those educational gaps with interventionists. And if educational gaps are going to be the purported reason for the academic gaps or the purported reason for this, we need to address the academic gaps. That's where real equity comes from, is supporting the academic gaps as opposed to a program that they told us by their own acknowledgement, we won't know for 3 years whether or not there's going to be any sort of movement. And they couldn't even provide me an answer to the question, do you have objective data that has shown that this has closed these gaps in other districts? Another one was Fox Ridge. We rushed into that, and I think we made a mistake there as well. I don't want to rush into another item and find that we've made a mistake, because these kids don't get to make it up 3 years from now if we find out this is a big failure. They don't get to go back and repeat those 3 years. So I will be voting no.
I'd like to respond a little bit. The research always shows that any change takes 3 to 5 years to happen. To wait any longer is a disservice to our children. We have evidence that our students, not all our students, are at the level that we expect, and we need to address that. I appreciated that the president of the union spoke to us tonight, and even though there was a miscommunication about whether the union was involved or not, the union took up the issue with its membership, and we have received a number of letters from people supporting the equity work. I don't know about you, but I did look at the materials. Deep Equity have provided us those materials. I went through those. I looked at the videos. I looked at the articles and the facilitator's guide. I did talk to Dr. Herman about whether an equity director would have input and, sorry, I'm nervous. Input and support to the work. And she agreed that that would be a good thing because some of those materials are a bit dated, 2016. I'm going to vote yes, because we need to get going. I don't believe that we have hurried through this. I think we have looked as a board that this is an incredibly important piece to the work we do for all kids. This is the first step. I would agree with Mr. McNally. It is about instruction, but it starts with relationships. And we have to get to the instructional piece. We can do that side by side as we're looking at the bias of our system. I believe our teachers work very hard to meet the needs of all kids, but our system has to be looked at as well. I will be looking for the board to do its job, to look at its bias. We're the policymakers, and we should be sure that we are tending to making the best decisions for all kids. So I will be voting yes tonight.
All right, me again. So investing in this professional learning, the purpose is really to build awareness, a shared understanding, a shared language, a lens which to view systems and structures that are in place in our schools. This is for leaders and administrators. The thing is without a lens that is shared and that shared understanding surrounding equity and inclusion, we're not giving them an opportunity to really identify the systemic barriers and revise them. Through this investment, administrators and then hopefully eventually teachers will be able to effectively improve the learning environment for all of our children. They cannot really do this effectively without professional development. I will support the professional development on equity because it's the right thing to do, because of the data that we have looked at. And we have had teacher after teacher, parents, student after student, and many alumni bravely take their time to communicate a very deep need for this type of learning to take place for our leadership, to telling us about their experiences, what they've witnessed, how it has affected them and continues to affect them. I want us all to think about the fact that we need to be responsive to the whole student experience. And I cannot vote to ignore their voices or their experiences that they've explained to us.
From my standpoint, I will be voting no to deep equity. To be clear, that does not mean, and hopefully my prior vote reflects that, that I'm not supportive of equity, and because I am, and I do think that we have opportunities that we need to make progress on in our district. With that said, I don't think deep equity is perhaps the appropriate partner to be doing that with. And I go back to, I am looking for, from my standpoint, a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. And the deep equity represents one component, which is professional development. But as I talked about earlier, with me not working in the district every day, there are multiple items that I have arrived already that need to be looked at. So again, that's why I'm voting no.
So my suggestion, first of all, I am not ignoring equity myself, and those, well, everybody at this board table knows where I work and what my career is dedicated to. So I don't really think anybody can question that. This is a matter of process. This is a matter of following a process that I don't think is going to lead us where we want to go. I'd prefer that the work be done in-house first to determine what the real problems are, what the real issues are, because I don't think we really know the basis for all the issues. It's very easy, by the way, for teachers, and I can tell you this as a 30-year teacher, it's very easy for teachers to write letters in support of and come and speak in support of what the administration wants. It's much more difficult for teachers to come and speak in opposition to that. There's a lot of fear that goes along with that. So I don't think those numbers are reflective of necessarily and based upon what the union has indicated, there is not widespread support among the faculty necessarily for this. I'm not opposed to equity, obviously. What I am opposed to is putting the cart before the horse. I think we have some other things we can do. I think we have PLCs where faculty can look at how they can change the specific educational gaps, those academic problems. We can use interventionists for that purpose. When we had Richmond Davis, we had widening gaps for a couple of years after the Richmond Davis situation. We put some interventionists in place, and we began to have some results. I don't think we have those interventionists, at least not full-time, in place anymore, and I think we're starting to see separation again. I'd like to see us not spend the money on outside programs, at least not yet, until we can figure out with more clarity, more certainty internally what's going on and what we need to look at. Again, the reason that I had asked for that data comparing us to similar districts and surrounding districts and our subgroups to those subgroups in those districts and our subgroups to school districts that serve those is we can determine, are we doing better? Are we doing worse? Are we doing the same? And that gives us more clarity. That, I think, is a big piece. Simply knowing that there are gaps in a lot of places. Are our gaps worse than other gaps? Are our students performing better or worse? And so I would like to know those things before I can feel any sort of support for this.
Okay. This might be long, sorry. I apologize in advance. This has been a really difficult journey in researching the material. First of all, I want to talk about today when we brought on Mr. Lackner. Welcome. You are very welcomed by this group and look forward to working with you, whatever that time may be. All students have the opportunity to reach their maximum potential in a sound organization. That is our oath. We've talked a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there's so much fear out there about this particular topic of deep equity. I think there's fear to talk about it. I think the parents and community have shared with us, some parents and community, dozens and dozens of emails. The fear of the unknown. What will it be? How will it be taught? What will it consist of? Dozens and dozens and dozens of students and alumni have shared with us their emails and stories. Sadly, their fear is the fear of the known. Their stories of continuing discrimination in our own schools. Two different kinds of fear, both very, very valid. What do we do with that conflicting fear? To Mrs. McCabe's point, I don't think we can wait a minute longer. We have vetted multiple companies. I don't remember who asked, I believe it was Mr. Huber. And several meetings that the lastly was presented in February 22nd at our L&T, no, that's business service. When was L&T presented? 17th, 14th, 16th? Sorry, you're making me do math now. That we looked at multiple options. I had reservations about deep equity. I asked a lot of questions about its original, what do you want to call it, developer, and how that material was started. We were given books and books to research, many links, pages and pages of academia, which people on this table is not my favorite. No, that's not my favorite. Very, very dry. There was nothing in the academia that talked about the things that I saw online from parents or that were sent to me. That is not reflective in the information. That is the professional development. That is phase one. There's nothing in the information that would be reflected in the site equity, which is phase two. I briefly looked at what the YES program, which would be phase three, where we would have 75 students in a room. That was the one phase I was thinking, well, maybe we could recommend phase 1 and 2 and hold off on phase 3 because it would be a year or so till we get there. And then I heard more and more students talk to me about their fears of what they face every day in our own schools. Sorry, I'm gonna try to check my emotions. It's devastating to hear what they go through. I don't feel like we should truncate the student portion. It's too important to hear kids in a room talk about what their experiences are with our instructors, with their peers, and what goes on. We have a CAO coming in who has also worked with deep equity, because we have a CAO going out who's recommended deep equity and people have given us criticism for it. It is an equal transition. To address the SEA issue, I wish we had collaborated more in asking their opinion. I think we still need to do that. I think we need to do that moving forward. I don't think that they necessarily oppose it. I might respectfully disagree with Mr. McNally.
To clarify, I didn't say they opposed it. I
Okay.
said there was not overwhelming support.
Okay. I may respectfully disagree with that comment. I'm not sure what their position is. So I think that's something that we need to find out moving forward. I would like their input more. I agree that we can't afford another misstep. I myself personally voted no to Fox Ridge, on a side note. But I think necessarily we can't look back. We have to move forward. And moving forward, we have to do what's right for our kids. And I'm trying to see what other notes I have, sorry. I think the other thing, the last piece I had is share more information with the public. I think we do have to share as much as we can about what we can about this program with the public. I don't know the proprietary limitations we have with it in regards to copywriting, but I would encourage administration to share as much as this program as we can with the public as we go. So whatever is not proprietary due to copyright laws, I would say publish it. Make sense? I think the more we educate, to what everyone said today, the quality of information we put out there so you understand what this is about, so we can help with the fear of the unknown. What is it about? As we educate the teachers, none of this becomes curriculum to the students. It becomes a professional development for our teachers. It becomes a site equity training for our administrators. And then it becomes a focus group, student voice group for some 75 of our kids. That's what it becomes. And so I think those are the pieces I would like to get out there and explain what it's about, convey what the information is, and talk about the importance of the work we'll be doing. Whether we can bring out examples or what we have to do. I know that the demographics in this state are different than other states. I've answered some questions from the public about who in this state has used it. We have many testimonials from districts, a dozen districts or so, that have used it in Illinois. I've seen articles from other states saying that they've discontinued it. Again, to Dr. Pearson's point earlier, the rules in Illinois are very different than the rules in the states around us for everything, including equity, diversity, and inclusion. Things are changing. I sat in on a meeting for a group called RISE, Racial Inclusion, Support, and Equity, that is developing in South Elgin. This is a conversation that everyone's having in education, in corporations, in government. This is not a conversation we can't afford to have. I think that was it. So again, I go back to fear. I think we have to address the fear that our public has. I think it's valid. But I think the fear that we have to address first is the fear of the students. So with that, I'm going to support it, but this has not been an easy decision for me. It's a scary decision. It is going to be one that's unpopular, but I have the courage to do it because it's what's right for kids, and that's always what I've stood on. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Manning, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Dr. Pearson, are you able to provide details around what will be the state requirements related to diversity and inclusion with the recent vote about cultural responsive teaching?
So those are really two different things. So culturally responsive teaching standards are really about educator preparation programs. And those standards are actually adopted to address what happens in our colleges and universities to prepare teachers for their work in our schools. Separate from that, the state board does have a plan that they've put out, a 5-year plan, and part of that includes a requirement for districts to share information about their equity work through the school report card. We haven't been given specifics about what that's going to look like, but we're going to be asked to demonstrate that we're making progress towards the state goals in equity, diversity, and inclusion as it relates to the statewide strategic plan, and it would be reflected on our Illinois, our individual school and district report cards. So that's all brand new. It's just been recently adopted and developed. But I know that there's been some confusion about those culturally responsive teaching standards because that kind of happens simultaneous to the state board, but they really are two separate pieces. And one speaks to educator preparation and the other speaks to requirements for school districts.
So do you have any line of sight to when something is going to come from the State Board of Education around the?
I would expect that we would see something in the next couple of months, you know, with them clarifying kind of what those responsibilities look like. So they kind of adopted it at a policy level, and then we usually follow that with some kind of administrative rules or procedures. And I would expect that they would begin to interpret what that looks like as it relates to responding to those standards.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to say one quick thing, and that is we all received a lot of board emails from students, and I don't want to say it's just based on this topic because we heard a young lady today talk about in person, but it makes me very proud as a board member to hear our students advocating. And I think that sometimes gets lost because we hear the parents and they advocate, and it's our jobs as parents to advocate for our kids. But I think it makes me proud to be on the board to hear students come and talk to us or send us emails and everything. So that's kind of just a general topic, not necessarily this piece, but it made me happy to see that. So,
Mr. Manheim, one last. I'm gonna once again say, as someone who has dedicated his entire career to the subgroups that we're talking about here, having seen similar programs like this not simply fail but be counterproductive, I think we need to table this. I know it's probably not going to happen, but I think we need to table this and have more discussion so that we can make certain that we have the right program. I don't believe this is it. I am 100% for equity. I don't think any sane person can say they're not. However, I do not believe that this is the right approach, and I think we need more internal soul searching before we figure out what the right approach is, and I don't think another month would kill this program.
So are you making a motion, or?
I would like to make a motion to table it until next month.
Okay, do we have a second?
I will second it based on the fact that I would like to understand how this program fits with whatever the future state requirements are going to be, and are they going to match, or will we have some type of gap created because of the program?
Okay. All right. So with that being said, then we will take roll on the current the motion to table deep equity, correct? Okay.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
No.
Mrs. Barker,
No.
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
No.
Mr. Mannheim.
No. All right, so back to the original motion. Do I have well, we already had the motion. So is there any further discussion about deep equity? We talked about it. So Ms. Marchand, would you call a roll for that?
Sure. Ms. Weibel,
Yes.
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave,
No.
Mr. Lackner,
No.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
No.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes. Motion passes. All right. Thank you for everyone's thoughtful conversation about the topic. All right, moving on then. That takes us back to the top, which is item B. Do I have a motion to approve the revised 21-22 school calendar?
So moved. Second.
So Ms. McCabe and Mrs. Barker. And then Mr. Moore is here to answer any questions.
Mr. Moore, could you articulate who makes, not specific individuals, but functionally, who makes up the calendar committee? Okay, and do we have representation from elementary, middle school, high school within that? Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions pertaining to that? Nope. Okay, Ms. Marchand.
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes, motion passes. Item C, do I have a motion to approve the proposed 22-23 school calendar?
So moved.
Mr. McNally,
Second.
Mrs. Barker. Any questions or comments pertaining to this? Okay.
It's a
Go.
very early beginning. Just to make sure everybody has paid attention to when we start school.
Ms. Marson?
Mrs. Fairgrieve,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Yes.
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes, motion passes. All right, that takes us to item D. Do I have a motion that this Board of Education adopt the resolution before you authorizing and directing the president and secretary to give to the non-tenured licensed employees other than final year probationary licensed employees listed on Exhibit 1 attached here to written notice of this board's decision to not re-employ said licensed employees for the 21-22 school year, and in view of the fact that the resolution form in front of you is the same for these non-tenured licensed employees other than final year probationary licensed employees, I recommend we adopt this like resolution.
So moved.
Ms. Weibel, is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Mrs. McCabe. Is there a request that this resolution be read in its entirety? Is there a request that any individual resolutions be read in their entirety? Is there any other discussion? Okay.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Yes.
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrieve,
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes, motion passes. Okay, item E. Do I have a motion that this Board of Education adopt the resolution before you, authorizing and directing the president and secretary to give to the selected non-licensed employees listed on Exhibit 1 attached hereto written notice of this board's decision to honorably dismiss said personnel effective as of the end of the 2021 school term, and in view of the fact that the resolution form in front of you is the same for these selected non-licensed employees, I recommend we adopt this like resolution.
So moved.
Mr. Lackner, is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Ms. Weibel. Is there a request that this resolution be read in its entirety? Is there a request that any individual resolutions be read in their entirety? Is there any other discussion? Okay. Ms. Marsan?
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Yes.
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrieve,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes, motion passes. That takes us to item F. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution authorizing transfer of monies from the working cash fund to the operations and maintenance IMRF SS debit service and tort funds?
So moved.
Ms. McCabe
Second.
and Mrs. Fairgrieve. Is there any questions or comments? Mrs. Fairgrieve spoke about this from Business Services.
Letter, and I'm sorry,
F.
because we went out of order, so.
We're on F.
And I scrolled, okay, there it is. I got it. Thank you.
Okay, you good? Okay. Ms. Marshall.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Ms. Weibel,
Yes.
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrieve,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes, motion passes. Okay, that takes us to our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like pulled? Nope. Okay. Then do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Weibel and then Mr. McNally. Any Questions, comments? No? Ms. Marson?
Miss Weibel,
Yes, sorry.
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes, motion passes. All right, that takes us to item 8, which is our information. As always, we have our Freedom of Information Act request, financial reports for D303 as well as Mid-Valley, our district enrollment, our COVID-19 financial impact summary, the Forecast 5 forecasting model that Mrs. Fairgrave mentioned from Business Services, as well as the Architectural Services RFQ. Okay, is there any new business?
I do have something.
Yes.
I have a statement I would like to make sure is in the record. Due to an article that was published in the Kane County Chronicle on March 6th, I'm addressing again my involvement or lack thereof in any impending recall action. I unequivocally have no involvement in this effort by D303 Move Forward or any other community group. Furthermore, the board has a code of conduct, and I would expect going forward that any board member, including Ms. Weibel and Mrs. Barker, if you have a concern, we have President Mannheim where that can certainly be addressed and he can escalate accordingly. Thank you.
Okay. Any other new business?
The only thing I'd like to do, I kind of forgot to give my reminder. I remind people to attend the committee meeting so they know what's going on. And if they're unable to attend, watch them. All these things are available via video, and I just always like to try to remind people of that. And the other thing I've on several occasions, and I want to again remind people that there are higher levels of government, higher layers of government than us. And I do hope that the people who are concerned about the issues that are kind of controlled by them are contacting those higher levels of government too, so that they can give us a bit more freedom to do the things we need to do.
All right. Yes, thank you for that reminder about all of our meetings being online and available. Even if you can't watch it the night of, they're on the YouTube for everyone to go back and watch it at their convenience. So thank you again for that. So we don't have anything for discussion. Are there any citizens' comments for closing? Okay. Let me double check here. Nope. Okay. Then do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session by roll call vote for the purposes of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or a volunteer of the public body, or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. And number 2, litigation. When an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
So moved.
Ms.
Second.
Weibel? And Ms. McCabe, okay. Ms. Martin?
Mrs. Barker,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Miss Weibel,
Yes.
Mr. Mannheim.
Yes. All right, it is 9:33 and we are adjourned. We'll meet back in the music room as usual. Thank you, everybody.